So I want to talk about some companies that are built on top of AI foundation models. So on different aspects, there are certain companies that are built. There are certain companies that are built on top of AI foundation models that are for the regular users, such as Perplexity. On the other hand, there are other tools, other software, other products that are specifically for developers, and so on. So I read one article, actually there are two articles, that question the validity and you can say the validity of those apps or those softwares, those products. So the question that they asked was that how reliable or what's the lifespan of those products. The point is that if you are building a product on top of an AI foundation model, now if in the next version of that AI foundation model, if that foundation model itself can do it, then your product automatically becomes valueless. You get what I'm saying? So they are saying that, so what kind of applications that can be built which are resistant to those kinds of being caught redundant by a new update of the foundation model. So let me just share that article with everybody. So this is the article. So here they are asking this question. So this one is specifically for developer tools that are built on top of AI foundation models. But then I also once I cover this article, then I will focus more on Perplexity as well. So here they're talking mostly about the tools that were built on top of AI models, but then they eventually got displaced. They become redundant. So these are the kind of tools that they're talking about here. For example, prompt engineering frameworks. So these are the kind of tools that they talked about for prompt tools, prompt tools, and so on. And so they also mentioned the reasons. So these were built maybe I think so a couple of years ago when the LLMs were initially introduced. So during that time they had very short context windows. So they created some workarounds to that which allowed for a larger prompt window. But they said that as newer LLMs had this capacity to have larger context windows, these kind of tools become redundant. So this become valueless. So this is one of the examples. Similarly, context window management, containing interfaces, and so on and so forth. So these were the certain kind of tools, developer tools that were created. But once the newer version of the foundation model was released, which had this kind of framework, this kind of capabilities, these tools become redundant. So how do we assess something that's valuable? So according to them, this is what they have talked about. So they have said that after analyzing dozens of AI developer tools, a clear pattern emerged that were distilled into a single principle: build on the model, don't band-aid it. So what they are saying is that don't try to find some loopholes or some things that the existing model can't do and just add a band-aid over it. So that's the term that they use, band-aid, synergy versus band-aid. So suppose, as I explained previously, previous LLMs didn't have large context windows, so you just created a workaround. Now once the newer versions have that, it becomes redundant. On the other hand, there are certain tools, they give examples of AI integrated IDEs like Cursor and so on. What they talk about here is that these kind of platforms aren't just providing a band-aid. They're building a whole software underneath using these AI foundation models. So what they're saying is that once the foundation model improves, their software, their tools that is built on top of the foundation model will also improve. The foundation model will not replace that thing. So as long as that synergy is there, this integration is there, those kind of developer tools, or in general, even though this article is about developer tools, in general, any tool or any software, any product that is built on top of AI for foundational model, if there is a synergy such that if the underlying foundation model improves, the product that is built on top of it also improves. So as long as that exists, that kind of products are safe. That's what this article overall is trying to say. So do you want to say anything so far?
Yeah, I mean, I have one particular example of such app that I use. So it is based on it uses some foundation model. I don't know which one, but it is based on LLM. It is actually a calorie tracker.
Okay.
So it has like multiple options. You can directly take a capture of the label, which I think of the product or the food. So which I think in general or regular calorie tracker can also do. But on top of that, what you can do is you can take the picture of the meal.
Okay.
Then it uses AI to process the image. It can identify, of course, to some degree of error. It can identify the depth. So like how much it will figure out how much gram of whatever it is there. At the same time, you can describe what you've eaten. So for if you give a brief description like three rotis with this egg plus this, so then in the behind the scenes it will use LLMs to identify how much calorie based on your estimate each food items will have. Then it will not only figure out all uh, the calories each food item have, it will basically make the entry for you in the app. So this thing you can actually do through LLMs to some degree. For example, you can open ChatGPT. You can say, "I've had this food for lunch. How much calories does each item have? Give me an estimate." So it will give you an estimate quite accurately because most of the regular foods are already tracked, so we know how much calorie they have. But then it will give you the output. Then you'll have to use some Excel, some other note taking app. You have to manually track on this day I had this many food, this many calorie on lunch and stuff. But this is like putting a front end to everything. So it is using a foundation model, but using its own front end, it is like automating everything else. So you just describe what you've eaten, it will identify the food, the calories, and it will just make the entry for you. So it makes the process very simple. And yeah, as you said, if the foundation model improves, the output of this also will improve. So that is one app or a instance where I think this works.
Yeah, that's a good example of this whole concept of synergy versus what
Yeah.
is it, band-aid. Yeah.
Perfect.
This is an example of synergy. Now, if I talk specifically of one particular application, what comes to my mind is perplexity. So, and I've been using it quite a lot. Is this based on the subscription that you gave me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so one new feature that they have added is called labs or something. So there, what you can do is, I think it's similar to deep research, but also a bit different because there the deep research that option is there, but the labs option is also there. So what you can do is that it can create an application, and I've seen certain examples where it has also created websites, like sample websites as well. Let me show you. So today I'm mostly going to talk different things about perplexity. Okay. Both the examples and certain foundational concepts about perplexity. So before I go to that, I'll start with this one. So you might know that Perplexity is planning to, in fact, they have already released their own browser, the Comet browser.
Okay.
So I think so. It was probably a week ago. This was CEO of Perplexity. So he has tweeted this thing. Now he's asking people on Twitter or on X how to. So what he's asking that what are some good ways to create strong incentives for people to stop using phone entirely? So I think so. In our last discussion, which is not yours, which is not recorded, but we discussed about how AI, how phone is no longer the gateway to the internet anymore. So they once upon a time they had this stronghold. They were the only person, only entity. But now with AI, they have they are no longer the only one. And specifically, perplexity is fundamentally changing how people interact, and how people search information. Now I don't have the exact information comparing how perplexity versus Google search, how much they use, but it does feel like that in the long term, perplexity will become the norm, even though the user base is not as much right now. So yeah, so okay, now they already have this single product. On top of that, they are now also creating their own browser. So they're taking away not only Google search feature, they're now also coming for their browser too. Can you listen to the
Mm.
noise?
Okay.
Is there okay? I think it's because of the IPL final.
The
I think
IPL, yeah.
yeah, I think RCB won.
Oh, they won.
They have probably they were on the verge of winning. I know I'm in Bangalore, so they are. That's the reason they're shouting.
Mm. Mm.
Okay, so anyways, yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, now they have also released their own browser, which is released, but it is only for selected users now. It's not publicly available. So that's another blow for Google. Google search was gone. It's not gone, but there is competition there. Now they're coming for browser as well. Let me look at a few of these tweets. I think so. One of these tweets. Yeah, this one. Okay, I think this is one example of the labs one, the labs app of talking about Perplexity Labs. So this example shows that through the help of Perplexity Labs, it has created a website, tutorial website for logistic integration. So this is one example. This is the kind of thing that I was talking about Perplexity Labs. And it's showing on the browser. Yeah, it's showing. And I think these are all the different scenarios of use cases of Perplexity Labs. You can make this kind of dashboards and so on and so forth using Perplexity Labs. So again, this is one of the examples where Perplexity, they do not create their own foundation models, but they have created a product on top of the foundation models. So and they are very much, and this is one of those companies, when a new thing comes, just like the dot-com bubble 25 years ago, a lot of products will be made, and I think Perplexity is one of those companies that is going to survive. It will be there 15, 20 years later. It won't be one of those.
Most likely.
Yeah, it looks like. And recently, I was not recently, just a few hours ago. as I was looking more into perplexity, I also listened to one of Arvind Srinivas's interview with Lex Friedman, and I think I listened to about 15-20 minutes. I think it's under 2 hours long, but finally I'll finish it. But you can, just by listening to him, you can get an idea of what his vision is about this kind of products, what he's trying to do. And he talks about that. This whole idea is about him creating Perplexity Labs is not to directly compete with Google Chrome, sorry, Google Search, because he gave examples that there were other companies who tried to compete directly with Google, like for example DuckDuckGo and so on. So what they offered, their selling point was that privacy, no ads, and so on. But still, they didn't throw away. They didn't knock Google search off. Google search was still in the market. So what he said, we need something fundamentally different, and that's what he created. So that's the thing. Now I'll come. So one thing, the next thing that I'm going to talk about is that I want to mention is about some fundamental business concepts which I thought about. So one question that might arise, that at least it came to my mind, is that why don't the foundation models build this kind of applications on their own? So one might ask that. So okay, before that, there are two reasons. There are two different scenarios. The first is if you are an established company like Google and so on. Google has their own foundation model, Gemini. So I'll take two examples. Well, let me take Anthropic as one example and Google as one example. Both of them has their own foundation models. So both of them could have built something like Perplexity. But why didn't they do it? And the answer is different for both of these companies. So I'll not go into details, but briefly for Google, what I'll say. The reason why Google hasn't done this is because of, I can say that there are two reasons. One is I will call it as, it's known as the innovator's dilemma. And the second is, as a big company, they are less agile. So what's the innovator's dilemma? So innovator's dilemma is that if you are a big and successful company, technically you have more resources than the others. But the downside is that you have a successful product and you do not have an incentive to innovate something new. Because if you innovate something new, you are creating your own competition. And why do you do that? So suppose Google search, they, as you know, I have told multiple times that most of their revenue comes from Google search or search in general. Or sorry, not search, advertisement through search engines in general. So they do not have an incentive to create an application that will take away from their revenue. Because Perplexity's revenue model, business model or revenue model is not through search or through advertisement on search results. That's a subscription-based model. So Google does not have the incentive. So that's the dilemma. That one, we are successful, we have all the resources to innovate. But if we try to innovate, we are going to kill. We are hurting our own selves. So that's the thing that startups do not have. We do not have any burden. You can go all in. That's not the case of Google alone. Throughout history, that has happened. Like if you look at electric vehicles, none of the established IC internal combustion engine companies built it because they did not have the incentive. Why would I kill our own business by creating a new category of product? But Tesla didn't have that, so they did this. Same goes for iPhone. Why would Nokia and BlackBerry kill their own product, unsuccessful product? So this concept is called the innovator's dilemma. If you are successful, you have all the resources, but you do not have the incentive to innovate. That's one thing. And the second thing is what I call is the lack of agility. again, it's somewhat similar to innovator's dilemma in the sense that you have an existing business model. So to switch to a completely new business model, suppose you can a Google can switch from a advertisement based to a subscription based Google search model overnight, because their whole business revolves around that. Means own they have a certain revenue flow yearly. They earn certain kind of certain amount of revenue through advertisements, and based on that revenue they have certain infrastructure, certain amounts of employees, and so on. So overnight, if it goes away, then they have to restructure the whole business, lay off people, lay off infrastructure, sell infrastructure, buy infrastructure. So many hurdles are there. So they are not agile. And the concept agile means you are quick to move and so on. So in football, we say that if a player is very small, they are very agile. They can quickly change direction and so on. And if a player is big, they are strong but they are not agile. They can't quickly change directions. So big companies like that, they are strong, powerful, but they are not quick. They can't make quick sharp turns and so on. So they are not agile. That's not the case with startups. They are agile. They can come up with a new business model overnight. They can use it. So that's for Google. Why Google didn't come up with a application like Perplexity. Now what about Anthropic? The second kind of categories. Now Anthropic itself is a startup. It's a new company. Just like Perplexity, it's also a new company. And when you are a new company, your resources are limited. So when the resources are limited, suppose let's talk one example. Just assume they have 50 AI researchers. The whole goal is to be on top of to create the best AI models, foundation models. Now they're competing very competitively with three or four other companies like Gemini, OpenAI, Grok, and so on. At least three companies are there. So if they decide that, and as I've said, they're a small company startup, so their resources are limited. Now, suppose they decide that no, we'll also, on top of foundation model, we're also going to build a consumer-facing app like Perplexity. So with the same budget, now they will have to lay off out of 50 employees, or suppose let's say all 50 of them are AI researchers. Now these AI researchers are good at AI research, but they can't build a consumer facing app. So let's say they have to now lay off 15 people, 15 AI researchers, and they bring some other kind of AI engineers who specialize in building this kind of apps. Now maybe that's not enough. So there are two things. On the one hand, you need talent, but you will also need money. To start something, to start a new company, you basically need two things: talent and capital. You need talented engineers to build the product, and you need capital to hire them, and the talent as well as other physical resources are available. Now you'll go to some VC, some investors to ask money. Now again, think from the investor's point of view. We already have Perplexity. That's a leading company. Now, and it's a very good company, as you can see. Now, do you have the confidence to give money to a new startup to compete with Perplexity? Because investors will also want their money to grow. They won't just give it to anyone. But still, let's suppose that you still get the money. You get the money and you get the engineers. Now what you're stuck here is that you are a young company and you're competing on two fronts. On the one hand, you're competing with Perplexity. On the other hand, you're competing with OpenAI and Grok. So now you are left with, you are not giving 100% to either. And as I've said, as Anthropic, you are a young company. You do not have that amount of expertise in that. And what's the final goal of a company? The final goal, at least in our capitalist system, is to create a business model where you can be a successful, profitable company. And the best way for a startup, for a small company, is to be very good at one thing at the beginning. Afterwards, you can expand, but at the beginning, your goal is to be very good at one thing. To be, if not the best, but at least at the top 3 4, so that you are not initially disrupted by some other company. So if you think from just that perspective, Anthropic will not think about competing with Perplexity right now because they
But I
already
think that whatever perplexity can do, cloud can already do. Like, what's the difference?
so. For example, its user interface is not as good as Perplexity. You can't categorize it. It's very basic. For example, the foundation model itself is very good, but can it do citations? I don't know if it can do citations like Perplexity.
Maybe it does not have that RAG system yet, probably.
Yeah.
But
So
it has other some other tools, like it has its own terminal
coding.
system, I think, right now.
Yeah. Recently, they also released their Claude 4 models. So
Yeah.
and yes, from developer rule perspective, it's there. They're very good at it. Absolutely. But yes, but the important thing, the unique thing that Perplexity that have has is this citations. And one thing that Arvind explained is that when someone searches something, he says that it does a Google search. That underneath that, it does a Google search of that term, and then when it answers it, it puts on the links when it generates the answer or something like it. It does something like that. So it's not just it directly feeds it to an LLM. It does its own Google search on top of that. But in any ways, I haven't found any such kind of citation abilities in Perplexity so far. Oh, sorry, not in Perplexity, in Cloud, in Anthropic's Cloud model so far. So in terms of user interface, it's quite different from Perplexity. Plus all the other features that they are coming up with, which yeah, you could say Claude has a lot of them. But the thing is that Claude has it from a developer's perspective, like this command line thing and anything. If you just open the Claude chatbot, it's very basic, which is what Perplexity has over Claude. So right now, from that perspective, Claude's first priority is to develop, you can say, the core foundation model. And apart from that, the one thing that they're in terms of use cases, they're mostly focused on developer related tools, not consumer facing tools like the model context protocol and so on, which they have created. So that's again mostly technical thing. It's a very technical thing, which is used by AI agents and so on. So yes, they have created certain, apart from foundation models, they have also innovated in other areas, but that is mostly developer focused. And one reason it's possible, I think, it's because most of the AI researchers and so on, they are also good software engineers. So it's very natural for them to create tools for them. So that's what I think. That's what they have been able to do. But again, but then again, in the long term, I can think that the integration will happen for both. Maybe 5 10 years from now, Perplexity might think about building their own AI models, going backwards. And on the other hand, companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, they might start to go front, try to build their own consumer-facing tools. So anything might happen. But right now, the logic says that as a startup, the logic says that you have to try to be good at one thing, try to be at least in the top three or top five of whatever you are doing right now. Don't try to expand to multiple areas. This is my view. So do you have anything to top to say on this?
Not really.
Okay, so yeah, I don't have much to say here. Mostly we talk about complexity and their old strategy. Um, yeah, that's about it. So you can end it, or
Can I bring it up? Like I don't really have a big topic or anything. I shared one link to you. Can you open it?
yes, yeah,
So yeah, you must have seen the news that now like Elon Musk has exited Dodge.
yes,
So just curious as to know why or like basically what the news was about. So like legally, it the reason he had to leave was already predetermined. So he was a special, what is the word they're using, special government employee, whatever basically. So he had a term of like 180 days or so, 130 days. So around this time he had to leave anyways. So that is that. But recently I've been also seeing quite a bit of negative news regarding his company. So Tesla has been on a very there's a sales decline I think,
yes,
and maybe yeah, so maybe the stock has also gone down. I'm not sure. And recently some SpaceX launch was also supposed to happen. I think that also did not really went the way they wanted to.
yes,
So all in all, like I think I have also seen some articles or sentiments that these shareholders are critical of him of putting his so much of his time on this government consultancy thing, where he is neglecting his other private companies. Whereas where like I think by law they are supposed to, isn't this the law that you are supposed to focus on improving or like increasing shareholder, what
yes.
is the word,
Stakeholder value.
stakeholder value. So that is by law your job basically. So he was neglecting that. So I think it's just I think, can you scroll down a bit? I don't remember what this is there. Yeah, here. Let's see. Yeah, so basically he was diverting time from all his personal, not personal, his private companies. Then yeah, we can scroll down a bit more. Yeah, so he was, I think, promising, or he was saying that by Doge he is going to cut out $2 trillion from the federal budget. So you're saying about $2 trillion of wastage is happening because of inefficiency in the government. But in his term, he claims to. I think I don't know if he claims or like that is the number being written, where it is only about 150 billion, which is also may not be accurate. So what he promised to do and what he was about, like what he could do was, there's a big difference in that. So he promised quite a lot of efficiency, but he couldn't deliver on that also. And overall, like I think, generally speaking, his public perception after all this has actually gone quite a bit down. So there was a time like he was in the, at least in the popular culture, he was considered quite a like a genius founder. Very yeah. So now I think he himself has led to led himself to be in a position where his public reception at least has gone down quite a bit because of his antics mostly. And yeah, there's nothing much else to this news. That's I think what I found some interesting points.
as his public perception is concerned, I think it has been a few years. I mean, since the election, he has it has become very extreme. But I think so since the COVID time, since 2020, I think so. He became very much hated, at least from the left side of the left-leaning people of America.
Yeah, when he is on the right, though it's obvious people from the left would probably have some gripes with him. But in general, people already have negative things to say about billionaires or like rich people in general or business owners. So, but I
Yeah,
think it has specifically increased for Elon Musk more, even though like I mean his companies are not exactly dystopian in nature. Like I think it is quite opposite. Unlike Amazon and Google, these other kind of companies which like actively, if you think about it, actively, how should I say it? Their products are actively making human life more convenient, but at the same time more worse in a way.
yes, I understand
But
what you have to say.
his products are on the opposite side. They do they are quite in a way, let's use a simple word like futuristic or not like that. They do not really harm our life or our mental capacity the way Google, Instagram, Facebook does. But because of his other antics in the political sphere, maybe his public perception has at least gone down quite a bit.
So what I've observed is that, as you have said, even I think so for a long time that's what I thought. Maybe for the last 8 7 8 years, that's what I thought. That one thing that separates Elon Musk and his company is that I always thought that things like Instagram, Facebook, those are all just to grab attention and money making machines, even though it has certain technological elements. But he is truly the kind of person that one wants to be, like things that really help humankind, and his companies are those kind of things. But I talked about 2020 because that's the time from which I started to hear more and more about, hear or read more and more about his uh, tweets, mostly the very obnoxious tweets that he makes. So that initially that was surprising to me because he presented himself as a very intellectual person, and even when you listen to his long form podcasts and conversations, he is a very intellectual person. But so when initially about 5 years ago, when I saw about people talking about his tweets and the kind of things that he tweets, like a retarded or maybe like a AI bot, those kind of things that he does. So that's very counterintuitive to his personality, and which only amplified in the last 7 8 months or past 1 year before the election when he started supporting Democrat and the Republicans.
Yeah.
So I don't have much to say today. Anything else?
Mm. Yeah, I think that's all.